Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Yet another blowout quarter from Nvidia. The chip maker at the center of the artificial intelligence boom not only beat earnings estimates, it also gave a bullish sales forecast showing AI computing spending remains strong. Chief Executive Officer Jensen Huang stoked excitement with talk of the dawning of a new era.
The next industrial revolution has begun. Companies and countries are partnering with Nvidia to shift the trillion-dollar installed base of traditional data centers to accelerated computing and build a new type of data center, AI factories, to produce a new commodity, artificial intelligence.
Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang also announced a 10-for-1 stock split.
And Nathan, that news is being cheered by investors. Nvidia shares are among the most actively traded this morning. Right now, they're trading above the $1,000 level, up 6.5%. Dan Morgan is an analyst with Synovus Trust.
The 10-for-1 stock split is absolutely huge because, like Amazon and Google, when they both did 20-for-1 stock splits, it really allows the retail investor to participate more in terms of buying more shares. And it's a psychological thing, but it does boost the stock.
Synovus Trust Dan Morgan also notes that Nvidia boosted its quarterly dividend by 150% to 10 cents a share.
And Karen, the Nvidia rally is helping lift other companies associated with AI. Shares of Supermicro Computer up about 4%. Dell is higher by about 5%. Advanced Micro Devices with a gain of nearly 3%.
Well, we turn to the economy now, Nathan, and the mantra higher for longer has been reinforced by Fed officials. We get the very latest from Bloomberg's John Tucker. John.
And Karen, minutes from the last Fed meeting show the participants not only rallying around higher for longer, but many questioned whether policy was restrictive enough. Various officials mentioned a willingness to tighten policy further if warranted. The Fed policymakers pointed to the possibility of high interest rates having a smaller impact on the economy than in the past. They also said the long-run neutral rate, that's a level of rates that neither slows nor stimulates demand, may be higher than previously thought. Since the Fed's last meeting, consumer price data has shown modest cooling, and while price growth remains above the Fed's goal, the latest figures alleviate some concern inflation is reaccelerating. John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thank you. Now, the Biden administration is touting its independence from the Fed. In a blog post, White House economists cited research and historical data to make the case that central banks' independence bolsters their credibility with the public. The move comes amid heightened speculation over how Donald Trump could ramp up pressure on the Fed if he wins another term in the White House.
Well, sticking with Washington, Nathan, we could see another vote on immigration policy in the Senate today. And Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says he'll bring the one House Speaker Mike Johnson refused to bring to the floor.
Will both sides come together to advance a bipartisan border security bill? Or will partisanship get in the way once again?
But Republican Tom Tillis says Schumer may have miscalculated the situation.
There were already no votes in his conference. So, I mean, it's just going to demonstrate that there was no path. He knows that it's not going to go anywhere in the House.
In any case, it is scheduled for today. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Ed, thank you. We have another big political story already developing. Former President Trump's last remaining rival in the Republican presidential race is now his latest supporter. Nikki Haley says she will vote for Trump in November. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports from Washington.
Haley, who challenged Donald Trump for the Republican nomination, is the latest critic of the former president to back his White House bid, as she told a gathering at the Hudson Institute in Washington.
Trump has not been perfect on these policies. I've made that clear many, many times. But Biden has been a catastrophe. So I will be voting for Trump.
Haley's endorsement of Trump is the latest sign of his near total grip over the Republican Party. President Biden has openly courted Haley's supporters to back his campaign. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Amy, thanks. Well, we turn to politics overseas now, and there'll be a national election in the UK on July 4th. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak called for one as his Conservative Party faces the biggest challenge to its 14-year rule. In a statement outside number 10 Downing Street, Sunak said the country needs clear leadership.
These uncertain times call for a clear plan and bold action to chart a course to a secure future. You must choose in this election who has that plan, who is prepared to take the bold action necessary to secure a better future for our country and our children.
Rishi Sunak has seen support for his center-right party dwindle steadily. Meanwhile, Labour leader Keir Starmer kicked off his own campaign, saying his party can put an end to recent turmoil.
On the 4th of July, you have the choice. And together, we can stop the chaos, we can turn the page, we can start to rebuild Britain and change our country.
Keir Starmer's shadow chancellor says the Labour Party will campaign on the economy, arguing that recent high inflation and lackluster growth are the product of a conservative government.
Well, back here in the U.S., Karen, the next antitrust fight could be coming at the will call window. Bloomberg News has learned the Justice Department is joining with a group of states to sue Live Nation Entertainment. More from Bloomberg's Doug Krisner.
The violations are related to Ticketmaster's unrivaled control of concert ticket sales. We are told the suit will seek remedies, including breaking up Live Nation. Live Nation is the largest U.S. concert promoter. It merged with Ticketmaster back in 2010. At that time, the DOJ allowed the deal to move forward when Live Nation promised not to retaliate against concert venues that opted against using Ticketmaster. Years later, the DOJ found Live Nation had repeatedly violated that promise. So the DOJ imposed an external monitor to investigate further allegations. In New York, I'm Doug Krisner, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Doug, thanks. Shares of Live Nation down more than 7% in early trading. On the flip side, DuPont shares up more than 3%. DuPont plans to split into 3 publicly traded companies. It joins a list of industrial conglomerates seeking to boost returns by breaking into smaller, more focused businesses. And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. For the second time this week, Penn Station service was suspended because of fallen electrical wires. The down overhead power lines brought the evening commute home to a halt for many passengers. Late yesterday, both Amtrak and New Jersey Transit were operating very limited service out of Penn Station. Delays and cancellations could continue through this morning. 20 people remained in intensive care in Bangkok more than 24 hours after deadly turbulence hit a Singapore Airlines flight and forced the plane into an emergency landing. One man was killed and dozens of other people were seriously hurt after the flight from London to Singapore suddenly hit turbulence. A workplace shooting in Pennsylvania left at least 2 people dead. It happened Wednesday at an industrial linen company just outside Philadelphia when police say the suspect opened fire on co-workers with a handgun. Frightened employees described the chaotic scene.
Next thing you know, I turned around, he pulled a gun out of his pocket in point-blank range, just like that.
The suspect fled, driving home just miles away, where he was pulled over and captured by authorities in front of his neighbors. The Biden administration has a, quote, deep concern about the closure of a key entry point for aid flowing into Gaza. Israeli forces pushed into the southern city of Rafah earlier this month, closing the crossing into Egypt. Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
Because of combat activities near and around the gate, the environment for bringing the assistance in is really challenged.
Secretary Blinken. Health officials confirm a second person in the U.S. has been infected with bird flu. The case was confirmed in a Michigan farm worker who had regular exposure to livestock infected bird flu. Michigan Health Department Chief Medical Executive Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian.
The risk to the general public remains low. We know that with our current understanding of H5 influenza and H5 influenza, particularly in livestock, that there is the risk for sporadic human cases, and that's what we've seen at this time.
Dr. Bagdasarian says the first case of human bird flu this year was confirmed in Texas and also linked to cattle. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. It's time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Rangers and Panthers started the Eastern Conference Final at the Garden. Actually rare in the Stanley Cup playoffs when the top 2 seeds of the 2 division winners get this far. Florida got a first period goal from Matthew Tkachuk. The game stayed 1-0 for the next 39 minutes.
down into Rangers territory. Shesterkin well out to play this one. Gave it right to Verhaeghe along the far boards. Verhaeghe back up front. Tip off a Ranger, and they score. Carter Verhaeghe centered it. It went off a Ranger, and the Panthers have a 2-0 lead with 3:48 to play.
On WQAM in Miami, Panthers added empty netter, won 3-0. Sergei Bobrovsky, 23 saves. Didn't face a single Rangers shot for a 14.5-minute stretch of the second period. Rangers, after winning their first 7 playoff games, are 1-3 since in their last 2 at home. They've been outscored 7-1. Game 2 at MSG tomorrow night. The Devils hired a new coach, Sheldon Keefe. He just got fired in Toronto. NBA West Finals, Game 1 to Dallas. The Mavs got 33 points from Luka Doncic. He had 15 in the fourth quarter. Kyrie Irving scored 30. The Mavs won at Minnesota 108-105. It's the East tonight. Celtics Game 2 with Indiana. Boston won the opener. Yankees hosting Seattle after 2 losses to the Mariners. Yanks won 7-3 as Juan Soto homered twice and Aaron Judge once, and both have now hit 14 homers on the season. Series ends this afternoon. Mets are off. Start a 10-game homestand tomorrow. They just got swept in Cleveland. Mets had a 3-0 6th-inning lead, lost 6-3. Mets are 6-14 in May. Phillies have the best 50-game start for anyone since 2001. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. Nvidia delivered for the 5th quarter in a row. The chip maker at the center of the artificial intelligence boom came through with an earnings beat, a forecast for even further growth, and to top it all off, a 10-for-1 stock split. So let's get more on these results now. We are joined by Matthew Bryson, Senior Vice President of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities. Matthew, good morning. I'm going to ask you the cliche question and ask you to take it literally. What's not to like about NVIDIA's results?
Honestly, there's nothing not to like. They gave us a great guide. They gave us great results. They told us that they couldn't meet demand. They told us they likely can't meet demand for another till midway through next year or beyond that. Well into next year, I think is what Jensen said. So there's nothing not to like.
How much is this growth that the CEO has continued to forecast for these last several quarters going to hinge on suppliers like Taiwan Semiconductor meeting demand that Wang is admitting is going to outstrip supply for quite some time?
I certainly in the near term, it's an issue, right? They told you during the call they couldn't get as many networking products out as they would have liked because of supply constraints. I think with their newer chips, they need a new generation of high bandwidth memory. High bandwidth memory has been tight. That newer iteration, HBM3E, is even tighter. So that's going to be a constraining factor. So I think at least in the near term, it's a problem. Longer term, suppliers will figure out ways to enable NVIDIA.
And you point out in your note that NVIDIA broke out networking as a line item for the first time. What stands out to you in terms of the networking aspect of NVIDIA's business?
So I think what's really interesting is they took this business from Mellanox that was relatively small. Now they've grown it to a size where it's comparable, if not larger, than something like Arista. And they're not a networking company, right? They're a GPU company. I think in the near term, them telling you that networking was constrained in the quarter they just reported, but it's getting better this quarter. I mean, that's just another tailwind for them, right? Where revenue that they weren't able to ship last quarter ships this quarter.
Obviously, there's a lot of attention as well on the announcement of the 10-for-1 stock split in the pre-market. Right now, we're seeing NVIDIA shares trading above your price target of $1,000. Where do you see the stock going now with a split on the way?
So, I mean, the split's always a good thing in the sense that you have investors that couldn't get involved because the stock was simply too pricey. Now that enables those investors. I mean, to some extent, it's a question of supply demand, right? You have more demand. It's a good thing for the stock.
So do you raise your target? You want to make some news this morning?
I can't talk about where my price target goes until I put out a note talking about where my price target goes. But I mean, certainly what they told us, it lifts numbers beyond where my current model is. And so whenever I come out with a report, my new model has to reflect the changes to their guide.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.